are officially live and just so excited and happy to be back. Keep coming back as long as you guys keep showing up. We love to have you here and love having you as part of our audience. So the same ask as we dive into any of these sessions. Give me those warm and fuzzies. Just some shout outs. Throw out that you're here. Say hello. And as we always like to talk about really quickly is this doesn't just have to be a questions platform. What we really want to see from our audience is, hey, what's going on with these FANG companies? Have you, or do you have any data that you want to share with the group? We really want to think about this like a community setting. And so hopefully that's the way everybody approaches it. And obviously we love to have you here. I can see people are here. All right, Eric, we're live. So let's just spend 1 minute like we normally do on the recap from yesterday. So yesterday, I just wanted to go off script a little bit. As you come into Tuesdays, you have a content strategy, you have a plan, and basically one of the biggest questions that's been coming in really, really frequently is, I've been in the interview process and I haven't heard back, right? And so it's a really, really frustrating item. So what we're going to do always is we're going to focus in on proactivity. Proactivity is how we are going to have massive success in the interview process. Proactivity will allow us to take it out of the recruiter's hands, the hiring manager's hands, and put it in our own hands. Hey, good to see you. Okay, so let's dive right in. Eric, I'm going to have you start throwing those Slack questions up there. I can see one of two coming through right now. We're here to answer questions. That's what we're here for. Don't be shy. One other really quick piece of business is if for any reason you want to keep your information confidential, just make sure that your name isn't appearing. I want everybody to feel really comfortable in the space. It was something that came up last week. Okay, let's dive in. So the question is about my CV. I had a Google employee referring me internally, yet for the second time, I was not able to go through the interview process. I checked my CV against the AI resume checker and also followed your formatting guidelines. What are some of the steps to improve my CV then? I mean, in my situations, what would you do? So the AI resume checkers out there, they're okay. I don't know. I mean, and again, anybody can throw some comments in there and tell me how you feel about those checkers. What we're looking for, obviously, is making sure we did a good job on the keyword match, because the keyword match is really important. So what does that mean for anybody out there who's applying to these jobs? The keywords are really going to come, obviously, through the body of your resume, but it's really going to come in the summary section. So really be paying very close attention to what's in the job description and making sure that if you've done those items, that it shows right up in your bulleted summary at the top. But the reality is that there are a ton of referrals going into the process and going into the system at Google every single day. It does not mean that we're going to get an interview opportunity. So my best guess is that there's nothing wrong with the CV. They were just looking for something a little bit different. I think that overall my feedback and commentary on the resume is there's a lot of overthinking when it comes to the resume, and go look online. All these resume coaches and resume writers, they're charging you insane amounts of money to do your resume. You don't need to pay somebody to do that. What you need to do is really, really think about your audience. And I know it's something that we've talked about a lot, but it's important and critical that we keep thinking about our audience. Limited time, simplicity is key. Bulleted summary, very clean and simple resume. Creativity will only be important in a resume for a creative position. Simplicity, the way we've learned to read since we were children, just think about it that way. That's going to yield the best success. I hope that helps. Hi, everybody. Thanks you guys so much for showing up. Okay. How should I connect with recruiters before and after applying to a job that I think would be a great fit? Usually when I even ask for further info about the role, I don't hear back. Are there different promotion velocities between the different offices? I don't understand that second question. This question maybe is about speed. Speed is usually based on demand and criticality of the role. That doesn't really change office to office. I think that's the question. But let's go back to this first question. Anybody who's hung out with me before and watched any of my videos, when you apply to a job and just follow up with a recruiter, 99.99% chance that you're not going to hear back. Why? There's a very strong chance that you are not reaching out to the right recruiter who's handling that role. I mean, how could you possibly know? Even if you were applying to an internship and you reached out to a university recruiter, are they hiring for that specific position that you applied for? Probably not. And so we can apply to roles and reach out to recruiters. It's just not a good strategy. What you want to do is build relationships, for instance, on LinkedIn by creating a giving first model. So again, this is something we've spoken about a lot, but I know it's not happening because I can see it on my end. So the approach would be you want to share a cool article, a cool video with a recruiter, with a hiring manager, with another product, program, engineer, whatever the space you're trying to get into, and not ask for anything. Just share, 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 build your network. It will come back to you over time. But when we reach out and we say and ask for things, it's always an ask, ask, ask. So I saw a really good quote the other day that said, we need to think about how much space people have on their shelves. And when we're talking about Google recruiters, they have limited to no space left on their shelf. So that space you're trying to take up on their shelf, it's just going to be difficult for them to respond. As we've seen recently, time and time again, they have enough difficulty reaching out to people who are in the on-site interview process, let alone answering questions on LinkedIn from people who randomly applied to Google. I hope that helps. I know that that's tough feedback, and I know everybody wants to figure out a way to get in the door. But we just need to be a little bit more strategic about how we're handling that and how we're going about that. Hope that helps. Okay, my question is specifically about the product strategy lead go-to-market role within Google Ads. From my understanding, the interviews include behavioral and hypothetical questions. I'm using PM interview sources to practice product strategy, design, estimation questions, but I'm not sure whether this is an effective way to prep for upcoming interviews. Any suggestions? So, hey, for product roles, yeah, this is a great way to go about it. Now, when we talk about the lead roles on product, you potentially could get maybe a few more behavioral questions that are just a little bit more based around leadership overall. So there's definitely some potential there, but design, strategy, analytical types of questions, technical product questions, and estimation questions, those are going to be your 5 key areas. And just understand that while this is a go-to-market role, there actually could be very few, if no, questions about go-to-market. As crazy as that sounds, what I've really noticed, especially at Google, is that in the product side of things, the questions have nothing to do with the position. So many clients, product manager for Google Cloud, no Google Cloud questions. So you literally could get no questions about ads, no questions about go-to-market. I want you to be prepared for those questions, but will you specifically get those questions? Maybe, maybe not. So just something to keep in mind, but absolutely, again, the categories will be strategy, design, estimation, technical, and analytical. Those are 5 great areas to focus in on. I hope that helps. For the product strategy lead role, okay. So this is a similar type of question. So I think I just covered that, but we can come back to it if anybody has any additional questions. Thanks for the recording video yesterday. I used that to remind the recruiter for an update on my interview. It's been 5 working days. Okay, awesome. Proactivity with our recruiters. Let's take back all the control. Let's just put all the ownership in our hands. Then we'll never be disappointed. We've set the stage. We figured out the best way to communicate with them. A backup person. We've told them how often we're going to reach out to them. And then remember in the survey piece, if they didn't give you a good experience, you have to give that survey feedback. They will be held accountable for that. So one of the things that I didn't mention in the video yesterday, and I just got some triple confirmation that Google's still doing it. Internally, it's called Vox Pop. And the question for Vox Pop that they care the most about is, did your recruiter get back to you in a timely manner? So, hey, like if they're not getting back to you in a timely manner, they're going to get super dinged on that. And that is actually going to hurt their overall performance. And they need to be dinged on it if they're not doing their job, because a key function of their job is candidate experience and communication. Hope that helps. My recruiter is building a packet with internal references and a team match before hiring committee. I'm applying for an embedded SWE position. Do any of those 3 things increase my chances? Yeah, so with internal references, everybody at any company, internal references help. Here's the thing. You just need to be 100% sure that that person is going to say good things about you, because I have seen this come back and really hurt people. And what will happen is if you get a bad reference or referral, let's say at a company like a Google, they're just gonna say no. They're just gonna say, hey, sorry you didn't make it through the process, and you'll never have that data or information. They will never share it with you. So it's kind of like, it's not very risky if you know the people who are referring you. But if it's somebody that's a little bit of a wild card, don't do it, because the downtick is way, way bigger than the increase. But yes, referrals absolutely will help. Team match can help before hiring committee too, because you get a hiring manager writing a statement of support on your behalf saying why you're a great embedded SWE. So, and building the packet is just a part of the overall process. I hope that helps. There's a question on Slack regarding preparation for GCA questions for business/account role. Okay, well, let's just cover that. Thanks for highlighting that. Sometimes we are not able to get to all the Slack questions, so we like to cover as many as we can, obviously, in this session. And you'll see Eric throwing a bunch of questions up there. And obviously, anybody who wants to chime in with questions or comments, love to see it. So for GCA questions, for a business/account role, it's across the board, right? So one of the ways that I want you to break down and think about GCA interviews is they're probably going to have one question that's just close to the role, right? So if it's in a business or account role, it's going to be a business type GCA question. It's not going to be stretching you really, really far. It will be somewhat in the space, somewhat in the wheelhouse, then the random question. Open a pastry shop. Twitter wants to start charging $10 a year. Is that a good idea? Etc. And those are questions that are going to cast a really wide net and see how you problem solve, and specifically problem solve for the role they're hiring you for. We've seen an uptick on the behavioral questions in GCA interviews this year. I don't know why. I'm going to try and data gather on that tomorrow, and get a little bit more information and see if I can figure out why there's been a little bit of a shift to ask more behavioral questions in the GCA interview. My best guess is it's just a poke and prod to really see what you've done in your career, and how you can really drill down, dig in, and identify the areas where you could improve. So I hope that helps. GCA interviews are obviously pretty tricky. Okay, as you know, there are multiple titles and roles under a certain job category. If interviewing for one title, could I later ask to be considered for a different title or role? Infrastructure architecture or SCE? Okay, so this question is coming up quite a bit, and it's kind of an interesting question. So I don't know what they call it at all the organizations, but my best guess is it's the same across pretty much all companies, especially these big companies where you see a ton of different roles. It's called dual tracking. And what dual tracking means is essentially the roles are probably going to be pretty similar. So, would you have to do a GCA or Googliness and Leadership or coding or a system design for both types of roles? What they can do is they can take a hybrid approach and say, we are going to consider you for both positions, and we're going to do the interviews that have duality. And that's why why they call it dual tracking. Here's the biggest thing. Don't surprise your recruiter. You're completing the on-site interviews, or you're about to go into the on-site interviews, and you're like, I'm also really interested in this other role. You want to introduce that concept, that fact, really, really early on so that they can prepare accordingly. And sometimes this can be tricky for recruiters because they focus in on hiring maybe infrastructure architecture, and then somebody else focuses in on hiring SCE. So they really have to communicate and coordinate across a couple groups. It just makes it a little bit more challenging. So you communicating your interest in multiple roles really early on, this is going to be valuable at any organization because remember, this is really important to us to make sure we're getting in front of the right position, the position that excites us, because the excitement will show purpose, will show passion, all that good stuff. So yeah, really tricky thing that's coming up, and it's coming up a lot lately. So if there's multiple roles, introduce it early on and you'll have great success. I hope that helps. Okay, I think we've been chatting on YouTube, so good to see you here. Invitation to apply for Google Cloud, completed the interaction with the sourcer and the hiring manager. You're approached by the sourcer. Does this give you an extra edge? No, it does not. You still have to make it through the process. Whoever you get in the door doesn't really matter. You still have to crush the entire process. Your interview is scheduled for RRK round. You follow the video, but there's no more information available on the internet. So yeah, so for Google Cloud RRK, you're gonna have to embed a little bit of Google Cloud into your answers, right? Do you have to be an absolute expert in the space? No, I believe you were going for, it was something like a partner manager. It was some sort of hybrid role. So in these hybrid roles for RRK, exactly what they're going to be looking for is collaboration. So how do you collaborate? That could be behavioral or open-ended. And then how do we embed the other half, the technology, when we're figuring out collaboration, user needs, customer needs, etc. Those are going to be the two primary focus areas. The reason why you don't see a lot of data on the RRK is because it's very specific to the role. So how do we make sure we are crushing the RRK interviews? You've got to go back through the job description. Every single bullet, just ask yourself, you could literally take that bullet and turn it into a question. And of course, we get requests to create questions, and we have a bank of questions that we're going to start working on and creating for you as soon as possible. But the reality is don't waste any time when it comes to the RRK interview. Get into the weeds of the job description. Even if it's vague, there's going to be some good nuggets in there. That's likely what the RRK interview is going to focus in on. I hope that helps. Suggestion, use LinkedIn's. Okay, so this is coming from Eric, our man behind the scenes. Suggestion, use LinkedIn's feature to view individuals' LinkedIn activity to learn about their interests. This feature will show you everything they like, posts, comments, and you'll learn a lot. And one of the best ways to really build a network on LinkedIn is, yeah, we can send out those unique messages to second connections, which is one of my favorite ways to, it's actually my favorite way to go about it, is send those direct messages, share something really individual, unique, cool article or video. But one of the other ways to really build a network is comment on other people's LinkedIn posts, like their activity, really start to engage and connect with them in that way as well. We're not doing it. And it's just a huge advantage. Like, people really like engagement. I mean, I really look at who engages on my LinkedIn. Anything I post on LinkedIn, I look at who comments it. When somebody comments, I almost always comment back, or at least like it. I look at who's liking my stuff. So I'm always kind of tracking and looking at this information. That can't be unique to me only. There's got to be multiple other people that are doing it as well. So that kind of engagement on activity can be really fun. I hope that helps. Hey, Richard, thank you for all the content. Have a GCA and leadership and googliness interviews next week. RRK already done. Told GCA will be with the hiring manager. Okay. That is not uncommon. The hiring manager is going to want to pop in at some part in the process. And so the fact that they're doing the GCA, okay, and this is kind of actually, I can see this is what you're looking for. So if I'm a hiring manager doing the GCA interview, honestly, I'm not really changing it up that much. I'm going to give you something really random to see how you navigate massive amounts of ambiguity, how you problem solve, and honestly, just a little bit of how you deal with stress and that stress that comes in the GCA interview. Remember, I know we talk about this a lot. You'll clarify, framework, and always go back to the role in the solution. It will just make these GCA interviews so much easier for you. I would expect a random question. I would expect the open-ended question that's going to be a little bit closer to the role, and then maybe one behavioral question. The behavioral questions in GCA interviews are going to cast a really wide net. What does that mean? They're going to be relatively open-ended behavioral questions, and not to confuse you, but what that means is, tell me about a time you had a conflict. Tell me about an initiative that had great success. It's going to be really pretty wide so that when you answer, it gives them a lot of opportunity to ask a lot of good follow-up questions. I hope that helps. Is there any free ATS site which recruiters use that one could use to evaluate resume as per industry standards? Well, an ATS is a applicant tracking system. So I don't know of any like free ATSs. I'm sure they got to be out there, free trials, all that stuff. But you can use tools online. But again, as long as your resume summary aligns with the key responsibilities of the role and that you've done those responsibilities and you put them right at the top of the resume, that's all that matters. Because remember, I'm not going to spend a long time on your resume. I'm going to spend 3 to 5 seconds, 5 seconds being a long amount of time. And if I see a few words, a couple roles that seem to be a match, that's going to trigger the reach out. I'm not going to spend a long time getting into the weeds. Now, hey, maybe if I like your resume, I'll spend a little bit longer. But yeah, I think that we're trying to figure out how to beat AI. Like we're really trying to figure out how to navigate the system to put ourselves in the best position. And I would just say simplicity is key. That's my number one piece of advice when it comes to the resume. I hope that helps. Videos are awesome. Thank you so much. You've been matched with 4 teams and finished your second round of interviews with 3 directors in an AVP role yesterday. Okay, awesome. So that's the business partner role at Google, and 4 teams is awesome. That's a pretty good indication that you've done pretty well. So really, really happy to have helped there. Those are really dynamic roles, and I think they're good. They're good kind of jumping off roles. Now, if you really like being in that type of role, totally cool, but you have to wear so many hats in those roles, and you have to manage and juggle a lot of items at one time. You have to be able to push back against some high-level leaders. And so if you can do all those items, it could translate well into like a project or program management role too in the future, if that was something that you were interested in. Good luck. Why don't you chime back in, come back in another week and let us know how it goes. And for anybody who's here today, like when you ask these questions and you're going through the interviews, come back, let us know you crushed it. Give us some insight. Let's help out the community as much as we can. But of course, we always love those great stories. So please share. Okay. Advice needed. Planning and product management certifications. Any advice besides product school versus product school versus Northwestern Kellogg. Okay, well, Kellogg is one of the elite programs in the US, right? It's an unbelievable program. Northwestern is an amazing school. Um, I don't want to knock any program, especially not a program as good as Kellogg, but sometimes if we're ready and we have the experience and we're ready to get into the job now, then sometimes it can be good to do something like product school or do some sort of certification that's a little bit more simplistic. Just getting Kellogg in your background, it's not necessarily going to mean that you land the job. Honestly, why are we all here? We're here because this school isn't as important as our interview skill set. Yeah, we got to have the domain skills. We got to be able to do the job. But in reality, when we think about it, our interview skills, you could invest a much smaller amount of money than whatever Kellogg costs 50, 60, 70K a year. And we could make a small investment in our interview skills and we could go in there and crush it. These soft skills are going to be ultimately what make you way more money over time. So just something to think about. Of course, that's a fantastic school if you decide to take that step. Okay, applying for a business intern role at Google. Any tips? Yeah, I think for interns, it's really assessing what's happened, especially if you're still in school. Like, what's happened in those school projects that really we can talk about conflicts and talk about successes. What's happened in some of these extracurricular items? Maybe you're the president of an association, and how have you built that group up? How have you really helped do things like charity or grow the group, etc.? So it is really about honing in on what you've done. And obviously, if you've had other internships, I want you to talk about that too. But collectively, you can just talk about everything. One of the other things I've noticed for internship interviews is they need behavioral. That is just the number one thing. And that's why those examples are going to be so important. What my intern clients have been telling me is that typically the interviews are mostly behavioral with one open-ended question. That's what I've seen. I hope that helps. Hey, Greg, you've been talking to Google recruiters for over a year now. Some of the best recruiters you've had the pleasure of working with in your career. You do a great job. Awesome. And I would just tell you that, with recruiters, it's when you get a good one, hold on to them. And if they can be your point of contact and they're going to really show that great follow-up skill and organizational skill of getting back to you quickly, that's somebody that you want to stay in touch with as much as possible. And also, delivering value. So let's talk about something we haven't really talked about before, which is we haven't really talked about how do you build really strong relationships with recruiters by sharing other good candidates with them. So maybe let's say your best friend, Greg, is Sue, and Sue has this killer resume, and Sue's maybe looking for a job. Well, share Sue's resume with your recruiter, Jane, and say, look, Sue's background's awesome. I don't know where you could send her, but here's what Sue identified for me. 3 roles, A, B, and C, with the links, with a few bullets for why she's a good fit, with her resume, with her contact info. You make it really easy for your recruiter, Jane, to find a home for Sue. You do that, you help out Jane's colleague to get hires at whatever organization. That's also going to be fun and helpful. I hope that helps. Okay, I got an invitation to apply for a position for Google Cloud. Interacted with the source and the hiring manager. Next week, you have the first RRK interview. And my present experience matches 80% with the focus areas and roles and requirements. And I think that this was somebody who was on earlier. Yes, we answered this question earlier on. Does getting the invitation give an extra edge or scrutiny? Neither. Yeah, so however you get in the door, again, it's not as important to just get in there, prep, practice, and really just make sure that you're ready to crush the interview. That's going to be the most important piece. Can you please give advice on what key areas would be best to focus when studying for a deal strategist job interview, particularly GCA? So, what is the core function of a deal strategist? It's working on deals, it's getting into the weeds, and it's really looking at documentation and data. And so, where is this going to show up in a GCA question? It might be something, let's do like maybe a more role specific GCA question. It might be something like, I want you to imagine something's off in the documentation. How do you solve for that item? And then you would drill down and kind of explore a lot of different areas. That could be more role specific. Now, again, anything random is going to be random for any role. And that's just the way I want you to think about it. The deal strategist role is a cool role. All the Google Cloud roles are cool. They're going to be heavy, heavy collaboration. So always be thinking about the collab part and the tech part, and that will help you have great success. I know that's a pretty high level answer, but I hope it helps. Oh, and there was a second part to that question. Specific types of case studies or topics to focus on, Qual or Quant, or how to best prepare. You always want to be bringing up the Qual and Quant components. They're both really important, so I don't want you to forego either item in your answers. Specific types of case studies. Yeah, I mean, I think that we should be utilizing the consulting firms, their frameworks, their case studies, and just be looking through them to understand how to problem solve. I think that can be really, really valuable. So much of what like BCG, Bain, McKinsey, what they do is super, super transferable for interviewing at a company, especially a company like a Google. Just kind of that analytical problem solving thought process. It can really help, but just dive around. You are never going to run out of data online to kind of dive in. So I hope those high level suggestions help. Okay, on scheduling for a GCA or leadership round, is it better to schedule for an earlier date than a later date due to competition? 1 week versus 2 weeks. Okay, that's a really good question. We get all sorts of questions about scheduling. I want you to put a little bit of pressure on yourself to get it done, because the more we push and push and push, we're really not going to massively prep the way we want to. Ideally, I love the bookends. So like, let's say we're talking with our recruiter and we're trying to figure out when we're going to do it. Let's say it's either a Wednesday, a Thursday, or a Friday. I love 2 weekends before the interview, especially if we have a more robust, like a virtual onsite, for example. Having 2 weekends to prepare can be really valuable, but eventually you have to push. Now, due to competition, a good recruiter will tell you, hey, we need to get you in the next week because there's 3 other candidates that are further along in the process. But this is where we can be proactive. We can ask, hey, if I was to take the interview out a couple weeks from now, would that hurt my chances at all? They're absolutely going to answer that question for you. So really kind of establish where the competition is at, especially if you do feel like, hey, you need a couple weeks because you haven't prepped in 10 years, or you need a couple weeks because work is really busy, or you're going on a vacation, etc. So I want you to build in that timeline that works best for you, but just understand at some point you're going to have to put a little bit of pressure on yourself to get that interview done. I hope that helps. The question is the role distinction between account strategist and account manager. They're really not very different. Account management is just going to be a little bit more overarching. Account management could come at a more established time with the client, where account strategist could be a little bit more front-loaded, but they're relatively similar, and I would prep in the same way for both. And any Google certification or program to get ourselves acquainted with the product in detail. What is the minimum amount of experience required? So account managers and account strategists, there are definitely Google Ads certifications out there, and the more you can take, the better. I think we might have talked about, I'm pretty sure we talked about this last week. If you're going for one of these account strategist roles or account manager roles that's focused in on ads, there are a lot of people in your competition who may not have worked for Google in the past, but they've spent 2, 3, 4 years working on Google Ads. It's a huge advantage, especially when they talk about their solution part and the open-ended answers, because they can really tie it back to understanding all the nitty-gritty of how an ad might really solve that answer. So you got to spend your time because your competition is doing it. I hope that helps. Yeah, so for a business intern role, you're not going to get a ton of these logical reason and problem solving questions. The best thing you can do is do two things to really help yourself. And this goes for anybody. It's create go-to clarifying questions and go-to frameworks. It does not need to be overwhelming. You just need a handful of go-to clarifying questions, such as new versus existing, the relationship, where you're at in the journey, maybe the industry. Those are some really good go-to clarifying questions. And then on the framework side, maybe you want an operational framework, maybe a little bit of a collaborative framework. If you have pre-planned clarifying questions and pre-planned frameworks, you're going to have to spend most of your time problem solving in the solution. But once you have the organization of those first two sections right, it's just going to make your success way easier because you get into the flow. You start doing things, you start getting into those questions, getting into those frameworks, and the flow becomes really natural, and you'll be just way more organized than your competition. I hope that helps. Yeah, so videos or books. Let's talk a little bit about this. I have a client right now, and this specific client is spending a ton of time reading, doing a ton of research. This client is incredibly analytical, but eventually we just need to do the work. And doing the work is practicing interview questions. It's the books. We can watch a million videos and read a million books, but eventually you have to do the work, and the work is the prep, which could be a book or a video, but then it's the practice. Because all the books and all the videos we watch, unless we say it out loud, not going to be super helpful or beneficial. So really think about doing the hands-on work. I would say that we could really get into analysis paralysis when it comes to these interviews. So less of that and more practice, practice, practice. You have to fumble through the answers to get good at them. Then once you get good at them, it becomes much easier once you get into the interview. I hope that helps. Hey Thad, a friend at Amazon who wants to help you get in front of a recruiter for an initial interview and avoid the initial vetting process. How do we optimize this opportunity? Well, that's not really skipping the initial vetting process. I mean, I guess you're getting to that next step of getting in front of the recruiter, but with these recruiter interviews, that was the video last week, that was the video. So definitely go back and watch that. I can throw that into the YouTube description as well. But with recruiters, be gracious, be kind, and a ton of questions in the YouTube description of that video. I have 32 questions you can ask your recruiter. So information is power. That's going to really help and set you up for success. But of course, they're going to be looking for a little bit of that domain expertise too. So make sure there's good alignment there. So if it's in a specific product area at Amazon, make sure you've done a little bit of research as well. I hope that helps. You are welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here. We love doing these lives, and as long as you guys keep showing up, we will keep doing them. And I say that time and time again, but it's such a great platform and forum for us to answer questions. And we want to make sure that we're building the community and that people are figuring out how to navigate this tricky landscape. Awesome. Thanks for coming back. We had the first round of initial TPM last Friday, and it was good. Today, the Google recruiter told me 2 rounds will happen again. And so we are going to focus in on 4 core areas: GCA, googliness, RRK, and leadership. I came to know that it can be a combination of 4 or any 2. What would you suggest? Which areas are going to be clubbed together? Okay, so yeah, so if we're talking about a TPM, it depends a little bit. I mean, obviously, sometimes they can break out the googliness and leadership interview. You're not going to get 2 GCA interviews. It'll just be 1 GCA. It could literally straight up be these 4. There could be 2 RRKs, and that googliness and leadership, again, one comes together. So all sorts of potential here. And remember, when it comes to RRK, you want to have a little bit of a skill set in the domain, of course, but you really want to be focusing in on your program management skills. Typically, where candidates fall down is they lack the domain expertise needed, or they lack the program management expertise needed. Usually it falls on one side of the coin or the other. I hope that helps. Hey, Carlos, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so yeah, we talked about this, the Platform Success Manager. Yeah, we can add some questions soon for the Platform Success Manager. We are happy to go through this exercise for anybody who wants us to add questions. We'll do it, but it's better if you do it yourself. Meaning, I don't want to say you need to do everything, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to support you guys. So we're happy to do it, but go through that job description exercise, go through that job description doc. Like, why is that so valuable? Because I can create the questions for you in this role, and then another role will come up and you'll ask again. Whereas I can teach you how to go and methodically chop through a job description, and then every job description you look at for the rest of your career, you'll know exactly how to go through it and identify the specific questions that will be asked of you. So yeah, we'll work on it, but I would also throw it back to you to say, hey, look, like, if you're not diving into the job description and identifying and figuring out how to get those questions yourself, again, we'll give you the tools to do that, and we will absolutely do some questions for you, but it's such a valuable exercise. Then let's talk about something fun. Something really simple, like, tell me about a time you had a conflict. There's 2 questions there. You can always create a behavioral question and an open-ended question. The way we change it into an open-ended question is, how do you deal with conflict? So tell me about a time you had conflict. How do you deal with conflict? Tell me about your most successful initiative. How do you make sure initiatives are successful? So every question you see when you Google it, or you go online, or we share the questions, just remember, if you flip the question a little bit, you can always have 2 questions, which is super, super powerful and fun if you're crazy like me and you like interviewing. I hope that helps. Seen questions about connecting with hiring managers on LinkedIn, but none about just visiting his profile before the meeting. He know that I researched him. Should I look at his research at his LinkedIn profile? Okay, this is a great question. My best guess is that this specific hiring manager, him in this case, probably won't know that you looked at their LinkedIn profile. I mean, you have to have, again, it just depends on, well, let me take a step back. You can set your LinkedIn to private, so that when you view other people's pages, you show up as anonymous. So that will clear out any challenge you have there. There's literally a setting where you can close out and not show that you're looking at their profile. So that's one step. My best guess is that people are not looking at who's looked at their LinkedIn profile, because in order to really get that full clarity, you need an upgraded account. They'll like flash a few people, but most people aren't looking at that. And I think that for the most part, outside of like recruiters or job seekers. Your normal everyday hiring manager isn't really spending very much time on LinkedIn. So is that something I recommend, doing research on the hiring manager or any of your interviewers? 100%. Let's figure them out. Let's find out a little bit of data. Is it going to be earth shattering? No. But if I know I'm talking to somebody who went, and let's go back to the Kellogg school, if I know somebody got their MBA from Kellogg versus somebody got their PhD in software engineering from MIT, I might take a little bit of a different approach based on their background. And that might not just be education, of course, experience, all these other things. I might find out a little bit more about them personally, but you can shut it down and make yourself anonymous. And I wouldn't worry too much about it. And it's definitely a step I would take. I hope that helps. Okay. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, I love comments, guys. Throw them up there for us, please. So wondering how an MBA is generally perceived at Google from the recruiter or an interviewer standpoint. I don't care. That's my 2 cents. Is it impressive that somebody completes an MBA? Of course. That's really, you need to be motivated and willing to spend a lot of money in most cases, especially for some of these more elite programs, which are now 60, 70K a year. I mean, it's a big ticket item. But will the vast majority of your interviewers, hiring manager care about that? Probably not. Does it show an extra level of dedication? Absolutely. I think more and more what we're seeing in the market is education is playing less of a role. Now, take that with a grain of salt. It depends. There are absolutely some roles where these advanced degrees are going to be super critical. But if we're casting a wide net, they're not quite as important. It doesn't mean that the learnings that you got from like an MBA program aren't important. All the case studies, all the working with others, there's some critical data points learned there. So it's really the value of the application of the MBA, not having it on your background. I hope that helps. Okay, awesome. Really glad to help. Started watching my videos a month ago. Okay, and now at the final interviews at Google, wouldn't have gotten this far, felt this confident. Thank you so much for saying that. We love it. We love to, this is what we're here to do, is to uncover what's going to make you a good interviewer. And again, we know our audience is small, but we hope that some of the lens and some of the data and feedback that we're giving, that people attach to the philosophy and the approach that we have, and we're always excited to get positive feedback. So thank you. Good to have you back. Thank you for the positive feedback. Update sent you an offer and you accepted. Amazing. Okay, so thank you for your guidance. How can you enter technical product from non-tech program management? So when you're going from program management to product, this is going to be, there's probably going to be some good internal learning and resources, I would imagine, so that you can start to learn that skill set. Don't jump too quickly, right? Like get your feet wet, start to learn the ropes, start to learn the nuances, and then if you feel like this is a good move, do it over time. And it's really critical when you're building your brand and you go into a new role that nobody is hearing you talk about a transition, like nobody. Because what they're going to be thinking is, okay, this is somebody who just came into the organization to get their foot in the door so they could move into something else. Is product cool? It's absolutely cool. It's the hottest role out there. Product management, technical product management, by far the most popular role out there today. Eric, our product manager, can sing to that. I mean, he's an amazing product manager. It's a really fun position with lots of unique challenges, but I would say build it up over time. You're just going to want to build that skill set in the background, but for brand, don't talk to anybody about this because they're going to feel like you're not even really that excited or interested about the role you're going in for. Building our brand, when we go into an organization in the first month, 2 months, 3 months. We're going to be building a branding course and talking a little bit more about this front end branding piece. It's critical. It will take you a long time to hurt that fantastic brand that you built going in the door. So build it up early, give people a reason to love you, and then over time, if you don't do things perfectly, it will take a long time to chop down that brand. So in the first 3 months, if you can just get after it, be friendly, be kind, be gracious, learn as much as you can, you'll have tremendous success. But congrats. So happy to hear that you made it this far. Thank you for showing up. Is it appropriate to contact via internal message the recruiter when working as a TVC? Sure, sure. If you know the role and you know that that specific recruiter is working on that role, or you may just reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for a little bit of guidance. Try and get as close to the recruiter that you want to speak to as possible. But is that appropriate? Yeah, absolutely. You're there. I really don't like this separation of TVC versus FTE. We're specifically talking about Google here. I mean, I was a TVC, so you know, and recruiters get it. I mean, a lot of recruiters start as TVCs too, so they understand. You're just trying to figure it out. I think it's a totally appropriate step. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with taking that step. Good luck. Okay, re-app send in a request for questions for a Google job spec. Cannot see it there yet. Link is removed by Google. Yeah. Why don't you send us that job description? It's just jeff@practiceinterviews.com. You can send it to me. Thanks. Oh, this is the partner manager. Android. Okay. Go to market. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you send that to me and we'll take a look. Thanks. Okay. Help you figure out the situation with the offer internal approval process. You've not received any feedback yet after the verbal offer. How long does it usually take? I'm going to throw this right back to you. How long has it been since the verbal offer? Like, what does the communication flow look like? Come right back and we'll get that question answered for you. You had your last interview with the hiring manager for agency account strategist role. Recruiter said that it will be based more on problem solving. Any tips for possible questions? Yeah, so for agency account strategist, like the more problem solving questions are, what I've seen mostly is going to be very heavily client challenged based. Like, your client isn't seeing the performance in their ads that they'd like to see. How will you help them problem solve for this? Your client, a really, really common one is your client wants to go up the rate, and the rate could be from 80 to 90%, 10 to 20%. How do you help them increase performance by 10% without any additional budget or resources? So it's this 10% increase with nothing else. And the key answer to that is you're going to look at what's being successful and really drill down into what's successful, reallocate money to the successful campaign, whether it's display or YouTube or whatever it might be. But that's a very, very common one. But it's going to be client challenge, tricky clients, something in that space. Those are definitely the most common questions. That 10% question, be ready for it. It's very, very likely. Yeah, so don't worry too much about that. You're just gonna really focus in on when we talk about not really having agency experience. Don't worry about it. You're really gonna focus in on just overall collaboration and relationships holistically. I hope that helps. A lot of people coming into these roles don't necessarily have specific agency experience for an agency account strategist. That's totally not uncommon. Okay, become a manager from a software engineer. You need to specifically speak with your current leadership about creating a plan for management and leadership. What are the courses you can take? What are the next 3 actions you can take over the next quarter, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year to start to develop those leadership skills to become a manager. So when it comes from being a SWE to being an Eng manager, first of all, if you have the passion and excitement for it, great. Have that conversation with current leadership and see if they can start putting together an action plan. If they come back and they say, you're not ready yet, well, that's okay. What's the action or actions that I need to take to be moving towards a manager role? So you really want to drive your career by figuring out an action plan, action steps, and you'll have tremendous success. I love that you're already thinking about it. So now you just need to put the wheels in motion and start to create that plan. The plan is what will get you there. I hope that helps. Okay, so you got rejected from Google, and the only negative feedback was, unfortunately, following today's connect with the team, feels ramp up time may be slow for the team need. And you are trying to understand, it was for an OCS position. According to the feedback, I did amazing on the calls, but the last interview was way different. Any feedback, and that would be great. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious, like, was this, the last interview was way different. I'm actually going to throw that back to you, have you come back and qualify that. Bad interviewer, different types of questions, etc. Once we get to this stage, there's really nothing we can do but try again. And trust me when I tell you that if you had success in almost all the interviews except for one, you're going to have that opportunity again. Doesn't make it any easier, the fact that I'm saying that, but patience can be super critical. I'm sorry to hear you didn't get the role, but maybe tell us a little bit more about what was way different in that last interview, and maybe I can give you some additional guidance. Okay. If there's a contractor at Google applying for the role I applied for, would the hiring committee interview give them preference over an external candidate? Okay. So these are two very separate questions. So we'll tackle this one first. So surprisingly, no. Google does not give preference over internal candidates. And my feedback is that they absolutely should give strong preference to internal candidates. And here's why. Those internal candidates have demonstrated capabilities that you as an external candidate just cannot show them. Meaning, let's say that the internal candidate, their name is Sue. Go figure, it's Sue. Now, Sue might have worked for Google, for instance, for 1,000 hours or 2,000 hours or 5,000 hours. It's really hard to beat 5,000 hours versus 3 hours of interviews, 4 hours of interviews, right? If that. So would I always pick Sue if Sue is a known entity? 100% of the time, I would pick Sue. Have I seen that happening at Google? Nope. They're giving external candidates as much stake in the game as internal. That's an advantage for you, because I don't think they should do that. I think trying to hire an unknown entity is a huge mistake. We take what we've seen from that person and we determine if they're a fit. They got to pass the interviews, of course, but I would always lean internal because I have knowledge and data. The external, lacking knowledge, lacking data. So I hope that helps. And then the second question was different. So let's tackle this. How long should you typically expect for a Google recruiter to get back for an update? Take some time to provide feedback. I believe when I left there was like the 48 to 72 hours is the expectation. Do they all do that? No. If it's been 5 business days, proactivity, go ahead and follow up with your recruiter. And hopefully we're setting that stage early on that we're going to harass them and follow up quite a bit. Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing that we can be taught how to create questions ourselves from a job spec. Do you have a video showing how to do this? Yes, we have 2 videos showing how to do this, and I'll put those in the YouTube description. So 2 videos on this, and then in our course, we have that other doc that we've created that's a newer doc from those videos. So the course teaches you how to do it. The course is probably the best, so sign up for our free app. And then there's 2 other videos that show, so I'll timestamp and throw these in there. I hope that helps. That course is probably not going to be free for forever. We're getting really good feedback. We're probably going to really enhance it and bolster it, and then we'll make it a part of our membership program. Just telling everybody that as an FYI. I hope that helps. We have a hiring manager informal chat next week for a marketing social role. If good, I move on to 3 on-sites. Any tips for business-based Google roles versus tech engineering? So the informal chat with the hiring manager. So again, it seems like we're gonna have a ton of timestamps in this YouTube description. Watch that hiring manager video. It's really helpful. Informal chat, positive, gracious. Let them really get out their questions. We don't know what they're going to ask, even in informal chat. They could go very open-ended, very behavioral. It could be completely informal. And then the last piece is you will have fantastic questions. And we start with the warm and fuzzies. What do you love the most about the company, your role? What's the most unique and fun thing you're working on right now? We really want to start with those warm and fuzzies, get them positive. Then we could ask more questions about the position, our expectations, etc. I hope that helps. Hey, Jeff, good to see you. Reaching out to recruiters when they don't give feedback. You did that. After 1 week, you text, but still no response. What should you do? You need to just stay at it. And then, of course, if you have any other points of contact, you need to follow up with them as well. So I know it's frustrating. Just keep checking in. Once we hit that kind of like week mark, we hit that 5 business days. Now we can start checking in sooner because they've totally lost respect for us. They are not putting themselves in our shoes. So now it's every 2 to 3 business days that we reach out. Gracious and kind every single time. Okay, but we got to start pushing the envelope. And of course, if you have another POC, you reach out to them as well. Good luck. Yeah, so I think we've talked about this before, but we'll come back to it. What other roles should you try? Account strategist and growth specialist. I mean, anything that's any sort of customer facing role would be great. It's a huge and wide net. But any role where you feel like, hey, you can really utilize your collaboration, people skills, is going to be really probably a good role for you. It could be any number of positions. It's a big number. I hope that helps. Okay. Thanks. We appreciate the positive feedback. Okay. For the product strategy lead role, you mentioned technical questions. Could you perhaps explain in more details what this would look like within Google Ads? Yeah, they're gonna ask you questions about how things work behind the scenes, but you don't need to be that technical. So an example would be, why is Gmail search slower than Google search? So you kind of have to understand what's going on from a systems perspective, but you don't need to be an engineer. So that is a very classic question that they would ask. Understand the technical setup, right? And so just kind of being able to pull back, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but just like being able to see behind the scenes of technology. And so having that baseline knowledge, these product roles are getting more and more technical by the day. So usually what we're seeing is that you have to answer those technical questions. Now, here's the thing. You're going after a lead role, so that might lean slightly less technical, but I just want you to be ready for it. I hope that helps. Okay. We're doing a question bank update tonight. Okay, we're doing a question bank update tonight. Thanks, Eric. That should be fun. Relationship manager for financial services. Can you become a field rep sales for Google? And what should you do? Yeah, because you're in the relationship space, absolutely you could become a field sales rep for Google. You're really just going to kind of want to understand what that role requires. We definitely have a ton of practice questions in our app for that. So start to see if those questions align with your skill and background. Any research you can do on the role, but no, a field sales rep role is really about relationships. And then if you've had any like metrics, quotas, numbers, anything like that, it's going to be important. Financial services, I'm sure you're pretty good with numbers. I know that that's a very, very basic answer, but I hope that helps. Hey, Stephen, good to have you back. All right. PGM for Software Eng. Interview questions will explore how your software development acumen can be used across multiple products. Any thoughts? Yeah, so for Program Manager, that's going to focus a little bit more SWE. It's a little bit of a weird title, I got to tell you, because usually if we're talking Program Manager SWE, it's TPM SWE. And I think we've talked a lot about this, that this time they were coming back to you for more of a program management role. So I don't think that they're going to go super, super technical, but you just got to be ready for anything. It would be really curious maybe to talk with your recruiter to find out why they dropped the T, but how they could still do a program manager software engineering. That might be a good question to ask your recruiter. Let us know what they say. Okay, we covered that one. Okay. So is it better to ask role-specific agency account strategist questions to the hiring manager? Yeah, you wanna show some specific questions, but again, start with the warm and fluffies. The science and psychology shows that people like to talk about themselves. So part of this is you're building a personal relationship with the hiring manager, but eventually, yeah, you should ask some domain and role specific questions. That's going to be helpful too. I want you to show off your interest without saying like, I know X. It's kind of like, I've been reading a lot about X. What do you think about it? So you're really kind of asking these cool open-ended questions and showing that you have an interest in this space. I hope that helps. Sure, absolutely. Received a verbal offer 1 week ago from TikTok, and they told you that they're moving forward with the process. Awesome. TikTok's a great company. And then, how long does it take to receive the written offer via email? I would touch base with them. If it's been a week, I would just say check in. A week sounds long, so don't wait too long to check in. TikTok's a great company. Congrats, that's awesome. From relationship manager. Okay, so we covered that question. Okay, yeah, it's a great question. We don't talk a lot about this, but um, virtual interviews. So what's our advantage in virtual interviews? You can have a cheat sheet. Remember, you're gonna have your pen in your hand. So you're gonna have a pen in your hand, you're gonna say, Sue, it's a great question, I'm gonna write that down. And so as you put your head down to write it down, what's gonna happen is you are going to have your clarifying questions, your frameworks, and your example. It could be conflict with Bob. It could be grocery store win, whatever it was, just a high level, few bullets on your example, just titling the example, your clarifying questions and your frameworks. So it's an advantage to be virtual because you can have a cheat sheet. Remember, I want you to have the pen in your hand and write every question down. If they say put the pen down, you can say whatever and just move on, but they should not tell you not to write down the questions. That's how the science tells us it will really be captured in our brain. Does location where you're seated matter? Yeah, so you notice kind of like the lights coming in on my face. There's a little bit of a shadow here. This wouldn't be ideal, but the setup for this live is how it works. So there's a tiny bit of a shadow, light coming in on your face. As you can see, my background is incredibly clean, Very, very clean background. And how you dress, business casual for Google. Just business casual. Have something like this. You could have a like something casual, like a flannel or a button down, no jacket, no tie. That's my recommendation. If the specific group had a specific type of dress, hopefully your recruiter would be telling you about that. But business casual is good. Okay, so the interviewers seemed to be firm and they asked questions on questions, follow-up questions. I asked if I was clear with my answer, and they said yes, although they would keep asking and digging in. Yeah, so it sounds like that was your GCA interview. Maybe, maybe not. I can't say for sure. But that's the role of the GCA interview, is to dig, 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 dig. Yeah, so sometimes people they're a little stiff, right? So we can button up our answers a little bit, be a little bit more succinct. It just sounds like maybe there wasn't a great connection there. You didn't provide quite enough. But as you stated before, all the other feedback is positive. You'll have another opportunity. And it looks like, let me just follow up on this comment. If you were open to the idea to interview for a sourcing role with Google. Oh, so was the role that, oh, interesting. I don't know. I would have to go back. Do we know? It's too many comments ago and I'll get lost in the weeds. So tell me what the original role was. But yeah, it would be normal if you got rejected for a recruiter role and they wanted you to go for a sourcing role. If it was something else, that would be interesting. So let me know. You had 2 interviews today. Coding wasn't good, but system design was spot on. You have the hiring manager interview tomorrow. Role is for a hybrid cloud architect. Does bad coding round mess up everything? Well, not necessarily. Google's not one of those companies that, well, you didn't actually, I don't think you actually stated where it was. So hybrid cloud architect role, you'll just have to wait and see. Sometimes interviews aren't quite as bad as we think they are. Maybe we just had a little bit of a miss on connectivity. You just got to go through the whole process. Coding's not going to be like, coding's like not the most important skill set for an architect. Design is going to be more important. Really heavy duty upfront planning and then collaborating with the really technical people is going to be the most important. So we'll just have to wait and see. I can't answer that for sure. Okay. Maybe we can. What's the hardest interview question you all have come across? And let's have Jeff answer it. Okay. We can maybe do that next time. But I'm always, obviously with open-ended questions, I have such a specific methodology that I'm always happy to do that. We're coming pretty close up on time today. So I just want to be efficient, but I think that's something that we absolutely could do for sure. And if we got to do it today, we can do it today. I'll do it on the spot. I don't mind. How can you avoid getting nervous or anxious before your interview? 3 things. Preparation. You're going to massively prepare for your interview or interviews like you've never prepared for before. That's creating the muscle memory. Second muscle memory is you are going to practice with human beings and you are going to annoy your friends, your family members, significant others, former, current colleagues, whoever you trust. You are going to annoy them, bribe them, whatever it takes, and you are going to go through it again and again and again and again, because the practice will really help you uncover not only your challenge areas, but the pitch, the tone, the flow. They're all going to be important. Lastly, our breath. We need to focus in on our breath. So if you don't meditate, obviously it's something that I recommend, but just taking really deep breaths, it settles and calms our nerves and our mind. Your breath is something that is oftentimes forgotten in the interviews, and you need to do all 3, and all 3 will help you have success. I hope that helps. What should be the strategy for handling? What if the agency or client doesn't agree with your solution? Types of questions in the agency account strategist role. Okay, well, I mean, if they don't agree with your solution, there's a couple of things you can do. Um, you can really determine and figure out why. Like, you really want to figure out the why with them. Then there's two major actions you can take. You can bring in use cases for why that has specifically worked in the past with like clients, specific clients in a like industry, same industry. So use cases are going to be absolutely a good friend. Maybe a very simplistic proof of concept that you might run for free or do for free for them, and or maybe bringing in a partner or an expert to help convince them as well. Somebody in leadership, somebody at a higher level, somebody with more experience. Those are three ways I would go about it. How does diversity in hiring help companies? Do companies prefer female candidates to male candidates for manager roles? I mean, inclusivity is critical when we talk about any role. Every organization is looking for a unique lens, and that lens could mean anything. Somebody who is going to lend a different perspective is critical for success. Um, so, yeah, that's my answer. It's all about perspective. Do companies prefer to hire female candidates to male candidates for manager roles? Just depends on whether you're a fit or not. That's all that matters. But obviously, the unique lens is critical. I hope that helps. Okay, Stephen, keep checking in with us. Let us know what's going on. Google Recruiter reached out to me and I'm interviewing for a program manager role, but they didn't tell you what role. How do you know? You have an interview next week. You ask. You got to ask them. They should have told you, hey, it's a generic program manager role. We just want to test your program management skill set. We got to ask. They got to clarify that question for us. So it's totally a fair question to ask them. Good luck. Oh, rejected from an online screener, but asked if you want to interview for a sourcer role. And it's been exactly 3 weeks since the last interview with Google. You didn't hear any. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I moved on too fast. Sorry about that. From an online candidate screener. But yeah, of course you should go after that sourcer role. Sourcer role is a great role. So yeah, you should try the sourcer role. 100%. Sourcer role is a great role at Google. So good luck. Definitely do it. Okay, it's been 3 weeks since your last interview with Google and you haven't heard any updates. What's the average amount of time? They should never go over 5 business days. You need to reach out right now, literally right now. 3 weeks, that's totally unacceptable. Be gracious and kind. I know you're busy. I'm sure things slip through sometimes. That second statement, don't say, I'm sure you're incredibly busy. I'm still very excited about the role, wanted to check in. It's been a few weeks since my interview. Totally unacceptable that they would take that long. Okay, this is a great stopping point. I didn't see anybody come in with a challenging question, so I'm gonna escape without having to do that, but that's absolutely something that I'm willing to do. I feel like, again, for open-ended questions, I've created a methodology so that any open-ended question that comes my way, I'm going to have a way to tackle it, and that is my recommendation for you as the audience. Thank you so much for showing up. Again, if the audience is engaged and the questions keep coming in, we'll run long. We tend to run about an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes. I really, really hope this helps. Check out practiceinterviews.com. We have a ton of free resources. We obviously had paid services as well. If you like the channel, please subscribe. We're looking to build our subscriber base. And the app, check out the app. It's free. Some of those components of the app won't be free forever. Thank you guys so much.